what's happening with.
So there's a meeting tonight.
There is a meeting tonight.
Rich, pull your microphone a little closer.
Are we on? Are we like?
Kind of.
Yeah.
Kind of, yes.
Yeah, we're just have a conversation, Yeah.
And the meeting tonight is to make the adjustment to get the mill rate reasonable.
Yeah, I think we have two items on the agenda. We have the rec commission, not rec commission, the rec policy with regard to budgets and whatnot.
Why does there have to be something special for them?
So
I'm on that board, but I don't even know about this.
So we've done a couple of policies recently, just more procedural.
Mm-hmm.
One had to do with stipends, the accounting side of things, so that you can track the flow of everything. And
are you talking like the handling of money
that's exactly
during events?
That's exactly
because I know that's
not really events. I mean, we've had three. We've had this would be the third one now that we would have come up with a policy, and we have other policies. I mean, this is not something new. There are policies and procedures that we or the town has to follow with regard to anything. Money's one of them. We have those that are specific to the Board of Finance. So we've already got two that we just created. One was capital.
Yep.
What meets the capital requirement? How is that dealt with? Because there were a few things that in the past. It was very loose. So it was really, we needed to kind of clearly define that, establish what that procedure was going to be so that, there weren't any misunderstandings. And I guess that's really what started that whole process was there were items, and we go back to the Chromebooks. Mm-hmm. One side thought that it, fit, one side thought that it didn't fit. And, we looked at it and said, okay, yeah, we need to kind of tighten things up a little bit and then figure out exactly what meets that requirement. Things change. Mm-hmm. Another one was with the two volunteer fire departments. They receive a stipend for volunteering, for taking their time out, going to calls, going to training, everything else that's required, the middle of the night stuff. But there was no defined policy on how it worked. Each department had kind of followed mostly the same process, but then you look at the accountancy side, and there was nothing there. So we looked at it and said, "Well, gosh, I'm surprised that fund has never been audited before, but." Without having some of those, standards in that policy in place, that's kind of an exposure area, I guess, in those terms. So, we got together over the summertime, the chiefs, Eric, two members of the Board of Finance, and, crafted a policy. Rec was another one. Ryan had come to us at one point and said, "Hey, would you consider perhaps changing how I create the budget and how we account for monies?" So before we just said, yeah, we formed a little subcommittee, and they met with Ryan and kind of went through all the motions on how does the program work? How do you identify whether a program is, I guess I'll say profitable, or at least going to, net zero by the time things are done. Yeah. So they developed, or have been in the process of developing, this policy that kind of tracks all of that and sets those kind of standards. And that's what we're going to go over tonight. I think hopefully it should be done. I think the last thing they needed to do was just run it by Ryan one more time for another look, and then we'll see it tonight in its entirety.
I know that with the Rec Commission, any kind of, monies that are exchanged, electronic now. Right. There's not a lot, of monies that are, but before there was a lot of cash business there, so it's kind of difficult. To really
I don't think it was so much the money transactions weren't the concern. I think it was some of it was identifying programs, identifying the number of people, what are the cost of programs, how do you put all that together? Right. What's the the 4-step or the 10-step process? And then there were some other, like I said, some procedural sides on our end, because there are certain parts of his budget that, this is going to be incorrect, but I'll just make it easy, they kind of net against each other. I mean, they're truly separate. Their revenues go into revenues, and his is an expense-only budget. But his program largely nets against itself.
Right,
I mean,
right.
And I don't remember off the top of my
So
head.
where do those monies get credited to? Just the general fund, or
so they do come back, and they're in revenue line items within the budget. So I mean, it directly pays for. So if his budget was, and I'm just going to use dumb numbers because I don't know what they all
Sure.
are off the top of my head. I mean, if his budget was say $400,000, we'll say in programming. And he brings in $200,000 worth of revenues for those programs, then really his true net budget's a $200,000 budget, which is all those ancillary costs. So so it's more just kind of trying to dial all of that in so that anybody that looks at it can understand what's going on.
are there monies that they should be credited for that they're not getting credited for? And is that part of it?
No, I don't think so. I think it was just
lost somewhere.
No, I think it was just that he was looking to change, I think, some of his budgeting format, and what he wanted to do with some of his programming. And I'm trying to go back now, and I'm trying to trying to remember. I'm sorry, sometimes I don't remember what I had for breakfast yesterday.
I remember what I had today.
And I think at one point he wanted to look at perhaps establishing some sort of a. I don't want to use slush fund because that has such a negative connotation, but a kind of a transfer fund to seed various, things along the way. And if he wanted to increase programming, he would have this initial fund that he could seed some of that, waiting for the revenues to kind of come back. And that was one of the changes that he wanted to make in this current year budget cycle. And we said, before we jump into that, let's create a policy. Let's make sure everybody's kind of on the same page, and then we can look at that in a future budget year. So
the benefits of being on Main Street. We heard the sirens a second ago, and where they're going. I think Kathy's probably tracking
she's
there
already-
right now.
I'm on it. It's a fire alarm.
Yeah. Rich, what do you got for Mr. Davis?
Not much. I was, at the meeting the other night, and I think the budget landed in right now at 3.1 increase as it sits.
311, 312,
as it
somewhere
sits,
around there. Yeah.
And I know there was, conversation around the table at the end of it all to where would you like it to be? And I said right there, sitting in the back of the room, 2. And that's kind of where you fell in at 1.15 or 1.75 to 2, something like that.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the 1.75 to.
Obviously, the lower the better.
Like I said before, I don't like paying taxes. I like to keep my money in my pocket, but the reality is,
going to be good with or not good with when you put it out there. I mean, you want to have 5 referendums again? There's the cost of that too.
I think that, and I go back and forth. I get up in the morning and I have this thought. By the time I'm at work, I've now got this thought, and 2 camps.
Yeah. Well, then
keep
the
it as
low.
low. Keep it.
Where do you start cutting? Right.
Keep it at a quarter. Keep it at a half.
Sure.
Keep it at 3/4, and you cut to get there, or you say, okay, maybe it's time that this board truly makes a pivot and says, okay, what do we really need as a community to provide those services based on what they cost, and
go back to the essentials, right?
Yep.
And I think too, what's important is, in addition to what's needed now, I think as a whole, Griswold needs to everyone's got to come together and figure out what this vision is that we're trying to do. I know we have economic development that's been talked about for 164, but I haven't heard of a vision. What are we looking to attract?
Yeah.
What are we looking to bring in? What are we looking to, what do we want Griswold to look like in 5-10 years? And what do we need from a Board of Finance and tax perspective in order to get there?
Well, you have to start with what you need. And then if that's okay, then you go to, what are some of the stuff that the people in town want? And what can we afford to provide on that end of it,
And if we had a goal,
right,
of what we were
There's
trying to
just-
achieve,
right,
then
right.
it'd be a little easier to kind of backtrack it and say, okay,
Everybody
well,
wants to
to
live
get
up
there,
here, but not
right.
pay up here. You know, it's the
Exactly.
problem, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Of course, you have the people
Yeah.
that are going to complain about the taxes going up, and then they're going to complain,
Champagne taste with beer
their
money.
budget.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's it.
Mhm. And then they're
Yeah.
going to complain, "Oh, my roads aren't being
Yeah.
done." Well,
Yeah.
you didn't want your taxes to go
You
up.
didn't
right?
want your
You
taxes
can't
to go
have it
up.
both
What do you
ways.
expect, right? Yeah,
You always
exactly.
have that.
We've we had that conversation before. I know we have. It's like, what's realistic?
Sure.
It's like, we had a couple of years, back in the day where we had flat budgets.
Mhm.
Was it realistic? No, because you end up
What,
you have to catch up with it anyway.
You're playing catch up now, right?
It's like
Exactly.
it's like a snowball.
Yep.
You know?
Yep.
Yeah, I mean,
You buy better,
Better it burns,
much better.
so much better it burns. The right insurance at the right price. You buy better it burns.
You buy better, it burns. You buy better.
Who isn't trying to find a way to save a little money these days? Your insurance shouldn't be the place to sacrifice coverage for cost. At the Burns Agency, we can market your current coverages with a variety of trusted insurance companies all at once. Let us take the hassle out of the process for you. One call, email, or in-person visit to the Burns Agency, and you could have your home, auto, life, or business insurance quoted with nearly 20 insurance carriers. The Burns Agency, proudly serving Eastern Connecticut since 1932.
You buy better,
Better it burns,
much better.
so much better it burns. The right insurance at the right price. You buy better it burns.
You buy better, it burns. You buy better.
Strain Family Motors has arrived. They're your local auto super center. Put some excitement in your day and rent a Polaris Slingshot from Strain Family Motors, adjacent to the Green Onion Restaurant on River Road. Check out Strain Family Motors Super Center on Facebook as well as strainfamilymotors.com for everything sales, service, and excitement. River Road, Lisbon, Strain Family Motors, your local auto super center. Strain Family Motors has arrived. They're your local auto super center. Put some excitement in your day and rent a Polaris Slingshot from Strain Family Motors, adjacent to the Green Onion Restaurant on River Road. Check out Strain Family Motors Super Center on Facebook as well as strainfamilymotors.com for everything sales, service, and excitement. River Road, Lisbon, Strain Family Motors, your local auto super center.
And how many people go to those meetings? When you hear it? At the polls. When people are like, this is too much effing money, blah, blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah, blah. And it's like, well, why aren't you at the meetings talking about it?
Yeah, you'll
right?
start seeing those people coming out
Exactly.
in the
Those are
next
the
month or
ones. That's
so. And
That's when you're going to find out what the people in town want, is when you put it out there to vote.
Yep. Yeah. Someone will post something on
Oh,
Facebook,
of course.
and then all of a sudden
Yep.
it'll start going.
and that is the double-edged sword. You're absolutely right. Nobody wants to pay for it,
Nope.
but they
they
want
want
the
it.
services.
Yep.
So what's the remedy? There isn't one.
You try to
there is
get
a-
the
you're gonna
happy
make
medium, right?
Yeah, you're gonna you're people are gonna be happy, and
I
some
would
people are
think
gonna be
that-
upset.
I would think that nominal, where to start? And I know you want to be at 175, you say?
I mean,
I'm thinking between 2 and 3 is average every year at least.
You
I
never
think
get that
it's
to
pretty
fly.
high.
I think that, historically the board has always said, what can the community afford? We can't put this out. What can the community afford? There are some people, no matter how small of an increase, can't afford the
Exactly.
increase. And I feel badly for them.
But
But at the same time, and I used this example at the last meeting we had, and I said, let's use the Board of Ed as an example, because they've got the biggest budget, they've got the most employees, so they've got the most
Right.
contractual obligations, just basic, and all we need to look at are just salaries, and we'll look at insurance. And
It's huge.
and when you look at what the increase would be based on that versus where we're going to need to land, it still doesn't pay the bills. So no matter what, it's that 2 steps forward, 3 steps back. But I think we need to pivot, and we need to say, look, we can't just concern ourselves in a one-dimensional state and say what can be afforded. We need to look at it and say, look, we understand that that it's not easy because this is a broken system for the community of Griswold. Everything lands straight on the back of the taxpayers. There's no commercial business, so any increase we shoulder that that burden because the scales are like this comparatively. But I truly believe that we need to start looking at what do we really need to properly fund. There's still a balance, and not everybody's going to be happy because that's not practical either. To say,
have you seen any impact yet from what the state did with assessing vehicles and then the 100% disabled veterans homes not having to pay taxes anymore? I mean, has that been factored in?
Oh, that's a big part of that
22
increase.
or 23 veterans homes that now don't have to pay taxes, right?
So I think it might have been 26 total.
26,
and I think that loss of revenue was about 3.8 million, if I remember correctly.
And how about the vehicles? How did that? Because the state, from what I understand, is going to assign an MSRP to vehicles.
Yeah, it used to be
town taxes.
It used to be book value, and now they're going to depreciate it based on an MSRP.
Right.
And initially, I think we were going to lose between the new tax credit for veterans and the motor vehicle realignment on how they're taxing that. I think we're initially going to lose somewhere in the range of about 640 or 650,000. I think was the number in actual tax revenue. Because I think the grand list was reduced by
that'd be what, $500,000,
25 million. I think the grand list had gone down by. So at the last minute, they passed up in Harvard. They passed something so that the towns could actually realign just slightly the depreciation schedule. So I think maybe instead of starting at 85%, they started at 90%.
Oh, they voted on that. They're starting at 90.
And they did, so they did that. That was the meeting that I was at. So I think that we were able to realize about $140,000 in revenue back that we weren't going to lose as a result of that. But there is a catch up there, and so that's probably 2/3 of a mil.
So the MSRP value that the state's coming up with, is that MSRP when the vehicle was new? I mean, how they come up with that number?
That's a good question.
I'm going to assume that they're going to start where it was new and then depreciate year after year after year.
Like my truck is 6 years old. My truck certainly technically isn't worth today what it was when it was brand new. Of course, in the crazy ass world that we're in, it's worth more. But as far as MSRPs at a dealership go, I mean, my truck's $70,000 now, not the $42,000 that it was when it was new.
Right.
So if they give an MSRP number that's based more in line with today's values, and I'm going to get whacked at 90% of it, my vehicle taxes are going to go through the ceiling. Right?
Well, and here's an artist. Say somebody buys a vehicle today. Is it based on the sticker price, or is it based on what they negotiate?
What they think it is.
What they negotiate.
What the state thinks it's worth.
Right, exactly.
That's,
I don't know how they're going to set that.
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah. I mean, anytime they make any kind of tax cuts, they're going to get it somewhere else. They're going to find another way. They're not just going to give it up.
But, it goes back to all falling on the back of the hardworking people or the retired people in town. Remember the lady last year, Leona, was talking about a woman that came in to pay her taxes. It was a little old elderly lady. And what was the deal? It had something to do with the ball field. Maybe it was the year before. It had to do with the ball field and the money that was spent on the field up there, right? And the lady says, when is that being voted on? And Leona said it already was. And she says, how did it go? She said, well, it passed for $3.5 million worth of
You're talking about the football field.
Yeah.
Oh, the football
and this
field,
lady started crying because she knew her taxes were going to go up because of that. And she says, I almost can't afford to keep my house now. So what are you doing to people, right?
Yep.
Strain Family Motors has arrived. They're your local auto super center. Put some excitement in your day and rent a Polaris Slingshot from Strain Family Motors, adjacent to the Green Onion Restaurant on River Road. Check out Strain Family Motors Super Center on Facebook as well as strainfamilymotors.com for everything sales, service, and excitement. River Road, Lisbon, Strain Family Motors, your local auto super center.
Yeah, and that's the sticky part you're in, is that you have those folks, like you said, that no matter what you do,
if they got a $300 pension, it's a lot. You know?
Yep.
My father worked 20 years in union construction. He was a heavy equipment operator before he went to the state, right? And 20 years, I managed his money when he was in the nursing home, so I knew what he got. His pension for 20 years was $380.
Yeah.
If he didn't have his state pension and good Social Security, he'd have never been able to stay in that house after my mother died. It wouldn't have happened.
Mm-hmm.
No way.
Yep. Yeah, it's. I definitely don't envy the Board of Finance and having to make these decisions.
There.
Yeah, because you have to.
You deal with the people's money.
Yeah, and you have to take into account those people that can't afford what they have now, and then
if you're
you
a sympathetic person, you're in trouble.
Right, and then you have to balance that with the needs of the greater town,
Sure.
and not just what we need now, but maybe what we are going to need in the next year or 2, 5, 10 years, and set us up for success for that.
Look now, we're lucky we're loading up pretty good with trucks and all. We had that ARPA money.
Yeah.
It's gone.
Oh yeah.
So going forward.
Yep.
When you're talking, $1 million vehicles or $500,000 vehicles, it becomes a capital thing, and we know how that goes. It's a slow process.
So to put in perspective, I mean, what we say, we're starting right now at about a 3.1,
right.
3.1, 3.12, somewhere in that range, I think.
Before you go on, can you equate that to what that would be for an average? What did they use? A $200,000 home? Just so people understand.
I know. I ask him this every year, and
just so people understand
a $3 million increase. If you took a $200,000 home, you divide that by 1,000, so it's 200 times 3, so it's $600. So $600
a year. $600 a year, so divide that by 12,
50,
and you get it's an extra $50 a month.
Yeah.
Doesn't sound like much, but
no, it doesn't.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and you'll save a little on the vehicle, and in theory. However, like I said, your property tax is going to go up exponentially compared to compared to the vehicle. I mean, I think to get down to that 1.75 to 2 range,
is it even possible?
I think that's somewhere around 1 point, and don't quote me because I don't have my sheet in front of me, but it's somewhere probably between 1.1 million to 1.3 million in that range. So I mean, a mill right now is $900,000 roughly.
Right.
So 1.1, 1.3 is probably that range to get there.
Sounds like 500,000 is coming out of the excess.
That'll be discussed tonight, right?
Yeah, that'll be part of it. I'm sure, and I think there's going to be a number of different opinions on that. I mean, you guys obviously know my opinion. I don't ever think we plug a revenue shortfall operationally by using surplus, because we had that 2 years ago.
A couple years ago, and we discussed it.
And that is a huge. Go to the highest mountain and start rolling a little snowball down. The following year, you've got to make that revenue up because
But if it's over the maximum, I thought I've heard that you can't be over the maximum because you'll get penalized.
So
you have to kind of spend it, right? You're not dipping in and lowering your account. Really.
So you're talking about you can't have X amount of dollars. You can't have over X.
19%, right?
So we established we changed the policy. We established a policy. I think our minimum is 10%. Our maximum is 19%.
Correct.
Today's program is being brought to you by the Burns Agency in Dayville and Norwich. Home, auto, life insurance, all from a family-owned agency since 1932. Call 860-774-8549 or find them on the web at burnsagency.com and find out why you'll buy better at Burns. The Burns Agency, a Hub International company. Strain Family Motors on Route 12, Lisbon. Quality used cars like the SNSN Strain Family Motors Mobile that you will see at all SNSN sports events. Oil changes, remote car starters, all available, and more in their service department. And if you really want to turn up the excitement, rent a Polaris Slingshot for the day and live it up. All available at Strain Family Motors, Route 12 in Lisbon.
If the higher your fund balance, at one point the state was back in, I think it was maybe the Malloy days. The state was taking a very hard look at what towns had for fund balances, and they at one point wanted to penalize you if you're responsible. If you're responsible,
Yeah.
And a lot of our fund balance is not based on taxation. A lot of our fund balance can be attributed to school. let's look at revenue. Yeah, you budget, $3 million, you come in at 3.2 or 3.3. That money ends up going into the general fund.
Right.
It increases your fund balance. So it's not necessarily.
And you're talking
an
sending
overtax.
school revenue.
Yes,
Yeah.
and it's not necessarily in every case based on overtaxation. Expenses could have come in
But
less.
I think that's how the state was looking at it.
Right.
If you're up like this, you're taxing people too much.
And that fund,
because of course that's slanted. It's a slanted view. So
and that fund that we're talking about is operating fund. So say something catastrophic were to happen, that fund is used to operate
Sure.
the town
Yes.
for 3 months or something.
yeah, well, in theory, yeah.
Yeah.
And we almost had that. A number. I think it was that same. I think it was during the same administration that when the state couldn't get a budget together, we had to look at that and how were we going to continue to be able to keep everything open based on what we had. So we're over by, I don't know. I think right now we're hoping to land about 500, between 5 and 580. I think is the number. My personal opinion is if you're going to use fund balance, that's fine, but use it for something like capital. We did that, I think it was last year, maybe the year before, where we overfunded, in that year, we overfunded capital by $250. So that gives you the ability to either continue with that funding level the following year, or you can pull it back and say, hey, we're automatically reducing capital by, that $250. I'll use that as the example. That has no impact on the budget because it was overfunded. So one of the schools of thought on that is, if you had to reduce capital to close that gap, you could then take that surplus and you could then refund capital back to where they are proper.
So you're backfilling it.
You backfill it. The caveat to that is next year, there's the potential that you may have to pull that 500 out, and then you're kind of starting over. But it doesn't create that situation where, okay, we've automatically now got to raise the mill rate as a starting point by half a mil or 2/3 of a mil because of that.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if this is even a valid question, and it's kind of driven by what you hear in the news. Now, I know that there are a lot of educational programs that are funded federally, at least to the state, and then it trickles down, whether it's, through ECS funding or what. With the closing of the Department of Education nationally, how does that, or will it even affect a small town budget like Griswold or Plainfield, with the monies that they may not see?
I guess it depends on how it all plays out. Number one, are they truly going to be able to close the federal Department of Education? But if they do close it, does that necessarily mean that all communities completely lose federal funding, or does it just get shifted from somewhere else? And you'll know better than me. I think it's Title I funding. Does that sound right on what the school gets?
Could be. I don't know. I'm not up on the.
See, I think I tend to agree with your school of thought that it would probably get shifted. It just doesn't go away. I don't think that it would. There's too many people that rely on that.
But they've talked about
But
that.
I think there's so many people that are complaining, or they're worried, they're concerned.
Of course.
It's
a big change.
Right.
Sure.
Well, Washington, D.C. has stated that they want to do away with the federal Department of Education and not impact the funding that the states get. They're still going to provide that funding. It's just not going to get funneled through and get washed and then go.
That's why I asked the question. I mean, I kind of knew the answer,
The
but
statement's been made.
but there are a lot of people. I've had people come to me, and I mean, I don't, I just ask questions like they do, about, the education budget, or I have a friend that works in a homelessness department, and or homeless prevention, in another state, and that's all funded, by federal money and stuff. Does it go away, or
cut out the middleman? I think is what they because of the cost of it.
Or they're using other federal departments to funnel the money through. I know Department of Treasury has been discussed and funneling like Pell Grants and things like that through the Treasury rather than through Department of Ed. So if it does
It's being
go
seen
away,
as wasted,
the money's not going to just
wasted money on
gone.
salaries that aren't needed.
Yeah.
I don't know how accurate it is. I read an article, and it was yesterday. course, I read it on the internet, which means
That means it's true.
roll the dice.
That
Yeah,
means
it's
it's true.
automatically
It's gotta be
You
true.
go
It's
to
on the
Facebook,
internet.
if it's there, it's definitely true.
but it was
right?
supposed. But it was an article-
Strangeeconomy.com.
yeah, but it was an article that was put out that what each state receives in federal funding from from the Department of Ed, and they had Connecticut, I think, listed at about 8%, and I'm like, that number is significantly lower than I thought it was, and not that means okay, we're in good shape, but I mean the other thing I think that we need to look at, everybody's up in arms, and what do we do about this possible loss of federal funding? How about the state of Connecticut fully funds education to the point that they are obligated to fund it? Because that's probably the biggest gaping hole. And that's a big reason why our budgets in small communities like us struggle the way we do, because the state of Connecticut falls short every single year by not fully funding what they should.
That's
Sorry.
loud. Jeez.
New phone. Very loud.
How about at 8%? And let's say they do away with the federal DOE. So that frees up a whole lot of money from salaries there and overhead and buildings and all that stuff. Maybe that number jumps to 10%, and the feds are still holding back money that they removed from the shutdown.
Right.
I don't know. There's a whole lot to look at.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of pieces with all of that.
Of course.
And it's going to take time. There's
And
no
what's
way they're
gonna
going to be
happen?
able to
I don't
dismantle
know.
it.
Ask Linda McMahon next time you see her.
Yeah, right. Yeah, time will tell. I mean, that's not going to happen overnight.
no.
That's got to be a huge undertaking.
Anything else you want to mention or talk about as far as the budget is concerned? What's coming up? When has the date for the referendum been set?
So let's see. We're going to work on trying to come up with a budget tonight that we're going to then present for public hearing. If we don't finish tonight, then our next meeting will be on the 31st. Public hearing is set for April 29th. So that's when everybody can come out and tell us what they think. I mean, over the last year, maybe last year might have been the first year that we did it, that we changed really the format. That in years previous or years prior, we just threw the budget out as was submitted to public hearing, and everybody got to talk about it. And then we went ahead and we cut things like crazy to get to where we thought it needed to be. And, it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So now we go the other way.
Because then stuff got put back in too, like
Exactly.
Phil Michelle over at the rec and all that
Right.
stuff. There was that whole debate there for a while.
Yeah. So it's good to, I think now it's better, I think, now to present the closest budget that the voters are going to see. And if there's a huge outcry about certain things, we can certainly have enough time to reconsider at that point.
Yep. And referendum's usually in May, right? Or June, beginning of June.
Referendum, will probably be in May, and there'll be the town meeting. The only wild card, I guess, in this whole thing is we are, what I think we were supposed to lose, $45,000 based on the governor's, proposal, and then said, okay, we're going to backfill some of the, I don't know if it was ECS money or something, or supposedly they came up with some other money, but the state's in the middle of trying to craft their own biennial budget. So we really won't move forward until we know what we're truly going to get from revenues from the state. So if they're timely, it'll stay on that normal schedule where town meeting would probably be the first week or two of May, and then the referendum to follow. But if not, then we'll have to push that off and wait until we know.
Mr. Canova, anything else? Or
No. Go to the meetings, find out.
Yeah. Or watch online. I share them.
Yeah.
Every meeting.
And this is going to be a budget that is going to be unique. So as I said at the last meeting, if you have an interest, you need to go out and you need to be not only informed, but you need to vote. This is a bifurcated budget. Everybody's worried. That was the one thing that we talked about. It's a bifurcated budget. If we send a budget out that's $2 million increase, we'll just use that.
Can you define bifurcated?
You vote separately on the general government and separately on the Board of Education budget.
Right.
So one can pass, one can fail.
Right.
If one fails and one passes, the only budget that can be cut is the one that failed. So if everybody gets maybe not what they want, but closer to what they want, and that results in a higher mill increase, everybody needs to be very diligent to make sure that all interested parties get out there and vote for the budgets.
And they're also talking, there's that little group that's got formed for the local form of government change. So they were also talking about possibly coming up with an option to put on that ballot as well, except that it has to be a
I mean, a question?
a question, but it's not a question. It would be a if it's on there, it gets voted on, and that's what it becomes. It's
Okay.
not like, are you interested in this?
Oh.
Do you want to make the
Well,
board of
there was a
selectmen
term for it,
five people board, right?
I don't know.
And it was a term. It had to be a binding question. It couldn't be just an informational question if it got put on that ballot.
I'm gonna be honest with you, and I don't want to go down another rabbit hole,
Oh, let's do it.
but
Have it.
my personal opinion, we need to do more than just add a few more selectmen to the board. I think we need a town manager. I think we need to change.
I agree with you.
I think we need
I
to
agree
change
with
the
you.
form of government, and
Totally.
and it's
Baby
and
steps.
it's not against
Baby steps. People
and
don't
it's
like
not
change.
against people hate change.
Yeah.
It's not against anybody, any group of people.
Mhm.
I've said it a number of times. You've got to run this town like a business.
It's a business.
Mhm.
That's
And
right.
the only way I think that you can really run this town as a business is to bring person in that's
somebody
able
in
to
from
run
out
it
of
as a
town.
business.
Yeah.
I agree with you.
And has that, that experience and that education.
Mhm.
But unfortunately, it's going to take some shock and awe because you're going to need to change the
Sure.
form of government.
Yeah.
Sure, comprehensive.
Yeah.
And bring that person in from out of town so they have no connection.
Right.
Nothing.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
here to
Well,
run
I think you
business.
got
Yeah.
They're here to
nationwide
run the
search.
store.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yep.
Yep.
And then when we want to pay him $50,000 a year to do
That-
so.
Oh, jeez.
That becomes a problem, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's why I say I think baby steps. Maybe increase the board of selectmen, maybe, and then do that for some time, and
Yeah,
then
just by
By
move
the time we're in
over.
elderly housing,
Yeah,
it'll be
yeah,
like
yeah,
you'll look at
yeah.
the time, right?
Add two more people to the board at what they only get $3,000 a year, right?
Yeah, yeah. But just
That's a
people
cheap
do
buy.
not like that. I feel like, especially in this area, anytime you talk about anything that's changing or any change of mindset nope, we've never done it like that before.
Change
And
that.
oh,
but
it's so
even that theory is
frustrating.
changing because one of the things I kind of talked a lot about back when I first started this whole thing was old money versus new money.
Mhm.
And some of the old money is starting to fade away, and
Yeah.
the new money is kind of getting more of a market share
Mhm.
through here. I think you're seeing a lot of more things have changed. I think in the last 10 years than
Yeah,
have.
I agree with that.
Anytime before
Yeah,
that.
I
Talk
think-
to Donald Burdick about that.
Sure.
Is he even around?
Yeah, I think,
No.
but I think
No.
you're starting to see some new blood, some new
guy
folks
did a
coming
good
up,
job.
and it's
He did, but it was always the same thing. There wasn't a whole lot
My
of
first
change.
house, I lived right up the road from him. You did a good job.
I think the biggest change, really, that happened, I'm going to guess, is the elimination of the police department.
oh yeah,
You
that was a
know,
while ago. Jeez.
Right, but then
And now look what
that's
they're
when,
paying, right?
Hmm.
and then we'll get a town manager for $50,000.
If we look hard,
Plus
maybe,
benefits.
maybe we can get for 45.
49
Or maybe we can just share a town manager with another
With the
town,
school-
right?
with the school.
Or with the school,
Yeah,
right?
right.
We'll share
With an
a manager.
HR and right, exactly.
Or we can borrow Plainfield's EDC.
Right.
See
Yeah.
what
We'll just
see what we can do.
we'll have a
there.
regional manager. How about that?
We could start.
What is this, like Radio Shack?
We could do a business on it. We could do a business doing that.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Scott, thank you very much, as always. Haven't seen you in a while,
Yeah,
so
it's been a while.
it's always
Good-
budget time.
Good luck tonight, boy.
Yeah.
I would be there, but we have a board of ed meeting. So.
As always, nobody envies your position.
No.
I mean, it's a tough gig, and you must have nerves of steel.
Yeah, because you're going to piss somebody off. Not everyone's going to be
of
happy with
course.
this.
Yeah.
There are going to be so many people pissed off, no matter what.
I'm pissed. I'm not even there. Yet.
Yeah. When will I? Well, let me say this. I spoke to Eric.
This is gonna be the last question.
Yep, and it's not even a question, just kind of more information. After the last meeting, as far as when people can see the budget, when residents can actually see it, because if you go online, it's not there yet. So he said after tonight, when it's a little bit more,
usually
final.
once we finalize it, or before
Get to that number, and that's what the real numbers are to look at.
Yeah.
So then anyone who's interested can go on and look at it line by line. But
Yeah.
I emailed Eric directly.
I think that's the
asked for a
difference because I
copy.
think McKenna puts his up right at the beginning.
Yes, yeah,
And
you see all the iterations.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, but you can ask Eric for it. He will email it to you if you wanted. I did that.
There's no sense in looking at numbers in the beginning because they're all going to change.
They change. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you're a numbers person and a data person, then,
Yeah.
you might be into
got,
that like
this
I am,
wall
but
of spreadsheets.
yeah, but
Anything else you wanna add, or because you look like you had something else to say,
No,
and then
I'm
I want to
good.
give you the
Nope,
opportunity.
I am good. It's all good.
All right. Thank you very much. SNSN Sports Community, trying to keep you connected with what's going on in our town and region. So, Rich, thank you. Kathy, and of course, Scott, thank you. Scott Davis, Finance Director. No.
Board of
Negative.
Finance chair.
I was waiting for him to say
Director.
something.
We only have one director on a committee, okay?
Oh, that's right. Well, at least he would do something. All right.
And on that note,
We're out.
have a good one.
I'm Sean Sass here on the No Name Sports Show on SNSN Sports. Today I'm joined by a senior point guard for St. Bernard School.
Krieger had a great game against Notre Dame Prep, had 20 points in that game in the semifinal. And St. Bernard gets their second turnover of the game away from the Green Knights. Here's Amyre, the player of the year in the ECC. Some of you've seen quite a bit, Coach.
Yeah, excellent general.
Amyre Gray. Amyre, how's it going today?
Good.
So the season just ended. You guys had ECC and then a state run. How did that feel for you guys coming into the season?
It felt like we were right where we needed to be because the whole goal is to go to a state championship, and we got there. Unfortunately, we didn't win, but we got as far as that. And to win the ECC championship is a good feeling, though.
So you didn't get the state championship, but you did win your third ECC conference championship this year. Under some wear and tear, you did get your head split open by a tooth. Just talk about the whole moment going into that game, and then when that injury did happen, what was going through your mind at that point?
Coming into the game, it was a big game. Some people like to call it a rivalry. I don't think it really is, but it was definitely a big game for both teams. And then I don't know if you can see my scar right here, but it was a crazy moment. Just right before the fourth quarter, I got my head split open, but then I went to my trainer and I was like, there's no way I'm not going to play this last quarter because it's one of the most important games of my life, and now I have a battle wound forever. And yeah.
And it was the last game of your ECC career. And that's exactly what your dad said too. And I was talking to him up in the concourse after the game. But I know you don't know this, but you may not know this, but during that injury, when you were getting taped up, it took them about 10 minutes to clean the floor.
Yeah.
They couldn't find anybody.
Yeah.
So I forgot to bring that up. They couldn't find anybody to clean the floor. It took them like 10, we were on pause for 10 minutes. That game went, and there was another game after your game too. But going past that, you got your third one, and then you ended the year with your second ECC player of the year, and your coach Mark Jones of St. Bernard's getting his another coach of the year. How does that feel, not only for you, but to be able to see your coach get another coach of the year in the ECCs this year?
It felt great to get player of the year again, because there's a lot of great guys in the league that have came out and are still there within the last 2 years. So for me to get it, I'm blessed for that. And for Coach Mark to get it, I love Coach Mark, and I've been playing with him for 4 years. For 4 years, so to see him get it is I love to see that for him.
And Coach Mark is well known around the community, not even just in Norwich. He's known. You'll see. Mark Jones calls, and the casino is second home. You guys play there as much as you guys play home games. You even played there this preseason. They played in a little tournament. How does it feel being able to play, so many times in the arena in front of so many fans, especially in this last state championship against Notre Dame West Haven, where there was over 6,000 plus people there to watch you guys play?
Yeah. So in general, to play Mohegan is crazy. The atmosphere is crazy. Once you get on the court and you go up and down one time, you can't breathe. So you need some water after that. But to play in front of 6,000 people. You can hear everything. The ground is shaking. So it's nerve wracking, but we've been there. I've been there so many times that I guess it wasn't as uncomfortable for me as some other people, but it's definitely crazy.
So let's talk about the team a little bit. You, Tyler, you got, is it Dan? Darren, thank you. I keep wanting to call him DeAndre, but that's DeAndre's one of the coaches.
Yeah.
Curtis and Amari Marshall, which are the two, your two power forward center pair. To be able to play with those, those four guys, because it's mostly you four on the court at once, you five on the court at once. Throughout the season, how did you guys, build that team chemistry to make the play, make the state, to win another ECC championship, and then make it to states against a tough team like Notre Dame West Haven?
Everybody has a role on our team, so not a lot of people seen the last 2 years of Darren. And Darren came in and embraced that starting role as defender, take away their best player, take away their best guard. So for him to do that it left a lot of room for me on offense to just do what I can do and play as hard as I can, because now I have more energy and I can play however I want. But Tyler embraces his role. He takes on the best player, as you can see, guarded 4-star. That was his job. And Amari and Curtis are just two dominant. They're both probably the most dominant players in the conference. So for them to all play their roles and me play my role too, is just, we all just came together at the right time, and you're seeing how far we went.
And you look at the Marshall brothers, and at first, for me, I know, and maybe a lot of other people, you're like, oh, these guys are twins. Well, Curtis is 2 years younger, 2 years younger than Amari. So he's got a bright future ahead. But, looking at, the team you guys have, of all the young guys coming up, you guys always, no matter what, you guys make it back to the tournament. How does Coach Mark and all the other coaches help you guys get to where you are today as players and as, individuals outside of basketball?
Well, he tells us all the time that he wants us to be us, and he wants us to play how we play. But in the off season, he'll have workouts, and we all work out and we'll all build chemistry. But we'll also work on our game. So that's getting us better for the season. So I want to thank Coach Mark for everything he's done for us.
All right, so we're going to take a quick break here. We're going to come back. We're going to ask Amyre about his future after high school, and that'll all be next here on SNSN Sports.
So Griswold with two wide to the left, single back formation. Ryan Palillo here wide to the right. Cassidy in shotgun. Puts it up in the air, and it is intercepted. That's Andrew Vincent with the interception right at his own 20-yard line.
And I think that's pretty much, I think we can call it at this point with 1 minute to go.
101.
Both teams out of timeouts, victory formation. Plainfield fans very, very happy today. That's it.
Lots of hugs on the Plainfield sideline. And with that knee, that'll bring us to the end of this edition of the Plainfield Griswold Thanksgiving rivalry. This year, 2021 goes to Plainfield. Your final score, Panthers 14, Wolverines 6. Yeah, the chance. Griswold had a chance, but Plainfield takes it, wins by 8, 14-6 over Griswold this year.
Yeah, congratulations to Coach Smith.
And now that'll lead us to a break where we're going to...
I got this. We're going to take a break here, and we're going to talk about the future and what I'm going to be doing next here on SNSN Sports.
And we're back here on SNSN Sports. I'm Sean Sass, joined by Amyre Gray of the St. Bernard's basketball team. So, Amyre, we talked about what happened this year. Let's talk about going into the future for you. What's it looking like after high school, after you graduate? What are your plans going out of high school?
I'm gonna be playing AAU with New Haven Heat this AAU season for the summer and the spring. And depending on how that goes, if college coaches talk to me and I find a great opportunity, I'm thinking most likely going to do a post-grad year. I don't know where yet, but we'll figure that out soon.
So talking about academics, if you get, when you go to college, have you thought of a major yet? Have you thought of any of that? You're just going to go in general? That's what I did. So I'm not going to try. That's what I did. So
sports management. I've been thinking about sports management. I just want to stay around sports, no matter what it is.
That's
what
I did too. Yeah. That's what I did in sports management. I mean, I'm gonna say it. I'll say it. Everybody knows already. College wasn't for Mike knows this. College wasn't for me. Not saying it won't be for you, but college wasn't for me, so I wasn't able to finish that out. I did talk to you about, working for the Connecticut Sun. I did that for about 9 years. I told you I'd help you get in there. But looking at sports management and looking at, basketball as well, is there anything, are you looking at coaching? Are you looking at, doing other stuff, statistics, all that kind of stuff? Or you just strictly, owner, GM, that kind of stuff?
I'm thinking all around, because I want to try to be a coach. I mean, a lot of people say players aren't good coaches, but I just want to test the waters a little bit. I could do that. I could even maybe ref, even though that's a tough job right now. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, reffing. So you and I both know Troy and E.
Yeah,
we're two who do. And we know that how they are with reffing. And then even for them, it's tough.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go back a little bit to the end of the season, right? So state championship, Notre Dame, West Haven. We were talking about. I just want to talk to you about. It's not really a question, but a role model you are. Mm-hmm. We've talked about at Mohegan Sun, I was sitting at the ECC championship behind young, two brothers, young kids in elementary school, middle school, and the only player they knew on the court was you. The only name they were yelling for was you, right? Weren't family, they were just there watching, St. Bernard's basketball, and they were saying your name. And not only that, but you going up to, or when you're out, your whole family does this too. No matter how many times, every time I see your dad, we say hi to each other, no matter where we are. But just your family, being a great role model, does that come from, basketball, or is that, I know a lot of it comes from your family as well. Where do you get that great trait from?
I would like to thank my parents for it, because my dad, he built the way, and he's a great people person, and he talks to people, and my mom too. And a lot of people go and they go up to them and they talk to them and can say whatever they want. In a good way, obviously. Just have a conversation with them and they'll talk back. So I think I get it from them, and they're great role models for me.
So to end it on a lighter note, let's talk about one or two memories that you've had through your years at St. Bernard's basketball that really stand out to you, with all the players you've played. I know you've played with a handful of great guys. Just a couple moments for you that have really stood out to you.
The first favorite moment was winning the state championship with that team my sophomore year. That we had the Fab Five, and that team was just great, and all the vibes were great. Everything was just amazing. And my second favorite was this year against Notre Dame Prep, Tyler Manguel game winner. I didn't play the best that game. Everybody else played great. So just to know that my teammates had my back, and then for him to make a legendary shot that he'll probably talk about for the rest of his life is amazing.
Well, once again, thank you for coming in. I really appreciate everything you've done for us, coming in, doing our first interview on the No Name Talk Show with me and Mike. Being able to watch you throughout the years, talk to you outside of here, it's been great. So just thank you again for coming in. And right after this break, we'll be back with more here on the No Name Talk Show here on SNSN Sports. Sports! Sports!
Sports.
And welcome to SNSN Sports Community. I'm Mike Benarski along with Rich Canova. And today we have the honor of speaking to an old friend here. We can say old friend now because it's been a while.
10 years.
10 years. Miranda Mahoney from Griswold Pride. So, wow, 10 years.
Yes.
Did it go by pretty quick?
It sure did.
Yeah.
It sure did. Yep. We throw kids in the mix of and moving to Griswold and everything. It went by really quick.
So I can say that, and I tell this story all the time. I even told it at your event because I really think it's pretty remarkable. The very first time I met Miranda when she came in to do an interview at our former location.
No, we did it at Charlene's.
Did we?
Our first interview was at Charlene's. That's how early it was in the process.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I don't even remember that.
Mm-hmm.
All I remember is that she didn't talk, and she said, "No, John will do all the talking." John from CHR,
No, I said
right?
Romeo will.
Romeo. See, I don't remember anything apparently.
Yeah.
Except that she didn't talk, or she didn't want to talk. But we got her to talk a little bit during that day, and she's gone from. I've seen from like fill in the blanks for me, but from doing like that, that kind of interview and not talking much, all the way to speaking in front of the Connecticut General Assembly,
Right.
numerous occasions.
Yeah, you know what the hardest part was?
What's that?
I had to speak in front of the whole middle school at a Red Ribbon rally. That was tough.
Yeah,
kids are brutal.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that
they don't understand, they're not paying attention, right?
I know for myself, it's when we're doing this, right? It's just us.
Yeah.
Right. Whoever's watching, and I'm okay with that because I don't see them. But like when I do like an event, which I don't DJ stuff anymore, but like if I do PA stuff, I get nervous.
Yeah.
And when I said that day that my therapist said, that is true. That is really true. That, said to me that basically, say hello, get them to say hello back. And,
right.
Now everybody knows each other.
I'm not big on speaking in front of big groups either.
I get nervous. People think that because I do this,
they tell you just picture them in their underwear and all that stuff. It's like, nah,
the Brady method
doesn't work. Yeah.
The Brady method. So
I guess Toastmasters helps that, right?
I never went through them.
I know a guy that did. A guy I used to work with. Yep.
Yeah. Let's go back to the beginning.
Sure.
I remember that when we were brand new, and I had met Romeo.
Yeah.
Romeo Blackmar.
Yeah.
And he had said, "All right, you know what? We're going to go ahead and start working with you."
Right.
And I went, "Okay, great." And it was like I didn't know what to do with it because I was like brand spanking new at this. And we started. That was Putnam Pride.
Right.
So how did Putnam Pride become Griswold Pride? Well,
Putnam Pride didn't become Griswold Pride. Putnam Pride was our mentor coalition. So with the funding that we received, it's a big pot of money. So the government really prepares you to be successful with that pot of money. So in order for a coalition to get started, you kind of have to have somebody to mentor you. And that's where Putnam came in. Putnam had successfully completed, or they were rounding down their 10 years of drug-free communities funding. And in the meantime, they applied for the mentoring grant, which was an additional grant that supplemented Griswold Pride to get started. So that's how that all started that way back then. And then it prepared us. It sent us to a National Coalition Academy, which we graduated from. We went to a couple national conferences down in DC. And, it wasn't just me. It was Griswold community members. We had Lisa Legler from Jewett City Savings Bank. Kevin Skolczyk came.
I was just going to mention Kevin. He was a big part of this at the beginning, was he not?
So the whole reason we reached out. So I was working in Putnam with Putnam Pride. We had state funding. Putnam had the federal funding. And how it came about was there was a tragic overdose death of a young adult from Griswold, and it really kind of shook the community. And this was at a point in the opioid epidemic where people still weren't talking about it. There was still a lot of stigma attached to it. And Kevin went on the front page of the Norwich Bulletin and said, "Look, we have a problem here, and what are we going to do about it?" And that was kind of unheard of back then. So, Romeo and I and John we were sitting in our office and we're like, let's reach out to him. And Romeo knew I was from Griswold, and I was like, okay. So we did, and that was in 2014 because it took a lot of planning to get the coalition established so we could officially launch in 2015. So that was 2014, and then we worked with Kevin that whole year, and then we had our first meeting in February 2015.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So I heard you say that their 10 years of funding, is that all you get is 10 years of funding?
Under this particular grant, yes.
Okay.
So
Then what?
Then there's different grants so like right now we're funded by ONDCP and CDC. It's called Drug Free Communities, and it's split up into two 5-year terms. We're in our 7th year, so our second term.
Right.
And from there, the state has some prevention funding. And then the federal government, I think they have 2 other prevention coalition funding grants that we would have to apply for, but it's very competitive. And with the state funding, they only open it up to new grantees every so often. So so it's going to be a wait and see what's available type of thing when we come down to it.
Because you're not out raising money on your own, are you?
No,
It's all
no,
grant money.
yeah.
So, I can see the challenge.
It's very challenging.
Of keeping it going.
And the whole point of the DFC, the Drug Free Communities Grant, is to build the communities or to build the sustainability of prevention within the community. And in some communities, it might look like, the town or the, say, Board of Ed would pick up my position. So there's still a paid staff person. Mm-hmm. In other communities, it's just building the infrastructure. And I think that's what we're doing here. Realistically, I know the community's not going to pick up me, but what I've done and what we've done is built the infrastructure. So Public Health and Safety Committee is now working on some sort of prevention or harm reduction, whatever it is. The schools have so much prevention going on. It's hard for me to keep track of it all, to report it, because I'm not doing the work anymore. When we first started, it was me.
You've networked.
Yeah. And I was doing all the activities. But my job now is kind of like, I feel like I went from being like a one-man band to now I'm like a conductor of a symphony. You know what I mean?
You've really kind of spiderweb through the entire community now.
Yeah,
it's not
it's
just
huge.
Miranda,
no,
which used to be
I'm
just
still
Romeo
the mouthpiece,
right.
But it's the community is doing the work, and you would think, wow, well, what do you do all day? Believe me, when I have to manage the rest of it and kind of keep track of it all to report it on our federal grant, because we have to show, if we're getting $125,000 in funds, we have to show $125,000 in match.
I say where it went, right?
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you go back to the early 2000s, which was obviously before you started what you're doing. The big thing in town that I recall, and it wasn't me that was involved, it was my son, was oxys. Mm-hmm. And boy, it was like you could get them on every street corner.
Yeah.
I mean, I had a dude get arrested in my driveway at 10 o'clock at night bringing oxys to my son. Mm-hmm. And he went through rehab 3 times through SCAD.
Yeah.
And the third time finally clicked for him, was good. And he got out and he got his shit together. Yeah. And he went in the Army and became who he is today.
Yeah.
But it took three rounds before it happened.
Yeah.
So I know firsthand what you're doing.
Yeah. Wow. Thanks for sharing.
I've been to the facilities that he was in. He was in Waterford. He was in one in New London, and then there was one over in Groton. Mm-hmm. And I've been there. I mean, I got take him out on Saturdays and go get lunch and watch him get pee in the cup on the way back in, and the whole 9 yards. I mean, they do hold you to a very strict standard. And unfortunately, it took him 3 times. But he's over it. He's done. He's married. He's got 3 kids. Yeah, and he lives in North Carolina. He's doing great.
Be thankful that it happened back then, because if that was to happen now, all of that, any street level pill now is fentanyl. That's
Back then it wasn't.
Back then, it was the pure stuff.
Never heard of it. Right.
So let's talk about fentanyl for a second. from what I understand, it's pretty much a cutting agent.
No, fentanyl is the drug. The cutting agents are all the additives that go into it. So like the xylazine that's been making its way in, and I don't know what else they cut it with, but yeah, fentanyl is the actual. It's a manufactured, man-made drug, but yes.
So when somebody gets marijuana on the street and not from a dispensary or,
you run the risk.
There's a risk.
So
there's a risk.
Why do they put it in there to begin with? Why do they?
I don't think they're doing that to marijuana. They're definitely doing it to cocaine and crack. Most of the fatalities that we see of are cocaine or crack users now. A lot of if you're an IV drug user or strictly fentanyl user, you have Narcan and it's widely available. But if you just came to the casino and wanted to have a good time for a night and got coke, you don't know what you're getting, and people are dying.
I've seen when I worked for the city of Norwich, I see the fire department come out when we were working at night and to known places, and up the stairs they go, and 15 minutes later they're coming back down, and it's like, this is the third time tonight, we know we'll be back.
Yeah.
And every time they revive somebody with the Narcan, they get pissed off because you just ruined their high. It was like, dude, you were gonna die. You gotta be kidding me. You ruined your high. I just don't understand what drives that at all. I don't get it.
Yeah, well, be thankful.
Yeah, but you see it. I mean, we saw it.
Yeah,
but yeah,
it's an alt. It changes your brain chemistry.
How you become so dependent on something like that, I don't know.
Well, that's another thing. Do people actually can they get addicted to fentanyl? Or is it they're addicted to the crack, which the fentanyl is put in?
Oh, both. Your body would become dependent on both of those substances, I would assume. Yeah. I mean, and you can be like, gambling is an addiction, and a lot of people, I think that's hard. It was hard for me to wrap my head around that, because I'm like, well, how has your body become physically dependent on
I can tell you about that.
I know.
Yeah.
My mother-in-law, God
but
rest her
for
soul,
me to like understand the science, when I was like, I was coming, from drug addiction. I'm like, but you're not putting a drug in, there's not some substance going into your body. How are you? But it's the
rush that you can win.
It's absolutely the rush.
My mother-in-law, I mean, listen, after she retired, she was a widow at that point, and she had it made, and she spent every dime she had, and she ended up with 2 mortgages on her house when she died. It's like, what do you do with it?
March is actually Problem Gambling Awareness Month right now.
So just so you know, I think I've told you about what I went through, like as far as gambling is concerned. So I don't do anything. I don't buy lottery tickets.
It doesn't interest me.
So my dad recently just gave me lottery tickets for my birthday.
You like this, right?
Yeah. Well, the scratching them is okay.
Yeah.
It's,
all right, I won $2. I'm going to go get
and then
more,
they're still on, they've been scratched, but and I won $10, but they're still on my desk because I don't want to go cash them in.
You'll just get
I'll just
more
parlay.
Yeah.
And
I'll cash it in. I'll give you the $10. I don't care. I mean, geez, be real, Mike. But no, none of this. I play Powerball. If it gets wicked high, I'll go buy 10 tickets or something. But I don't.
I'll overdo it.
I don't.
And I need to stay away from that.
I don't go to the casinos.
But at least you recognize that.
Even on cruise ships, I don't go to the casinos. It's not an interest,
Yeah. It's not for everybody. It's like, I'm not a beer drinker. I know people that have passed away because of an addiction to alcohol and or beer. So it's sad. I think that could lead into something, and it was leading me down a dark road. I was to the point where, all right, this isn't about me. So let's move on. So 10 years.
Yes.
All right. And we've talked about a little bit about fentanyl and how Griswold Pride has gotten started. What I'd like to get into next is where we are now.
Yeah.
And how we got there. And so let's take a quick break, and we'll come back and we'll talk about where Griswold Pride is now. What are you doing? And what I can kind of say right off the bat is that it has changed a lot.
Yeah.
The perception of it all has changed so much
from beginning until now. We'll be back in a minute right here on SNSN Sports Community.
Today's program is being brought to you by the Burns Agency in Dayville and Norwich. Home, auto, life insurance, all from a family-owned agency since 1932. Call 860-774-8549 or find them on the web at burnsagency.com and find out why you'll buy better at Burns. The Burns Agency, a Hub International company. Strain Family Motors on Route 12, Lisbon. Quality used cars like the SNSN Strain Family Motors Mobile that you will see at all SNSN sports events. Oil changes, remote car starters, all available and more in their service department. And if you really want to turn up the excitement, rent a Polaris Slingshot for the day and live it up. All available at Strain Family Motors, Route 12 in Lisbon.
So anyway, we're back talking to Miranda Mahoney from Griswold Pride, and one of the things we want to talk about is where we are now.
Mm-hmm.
So the perception of drug abuse or drug addiction has really changed a lot. And before we get into something like, let's talk a little bit about Matt's mission.
Yeah. So,
which is another spider web, or that's in the
right, and they're coming up on 10 years too.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy how all three of us kind of launched around the same time. So Kathy Duffy and her daughter Kelly started Matt's Mission after the death of Kathy's son, Kelly's brother, and just to really transform the stigma around addiction. And offer support to families.
Can you explain stigma? I don't know if a lot of people understand. They hear the word, but what does stigma mean?
Stigma is the perception, I guess, of something. So, Kathy and Matt's Mission has done an amazing job at really helping to shape that conversation, not just in looking at people with a substance use disorder, but focusing also on be cognizant of the language you're using. So we're not, the addict. No, we don't use that. It's a person with a substance use disorder, person with a opioid use disorder, alcohol use disorder. They're a person first. So that's one of the main things. I think that was, to jump on. And then from there, it just snowballed, And it wasn't just here. I think globally, addiction, the stigma surrounding that has really shifted, but to a good thing.
Well, we've seen it.
Yeah,
we've seen it. And you talk, I mentioned, the whole well, you had talked about it first, and how now you're managing a whole bunch of different parts of the community within Griswold Pride. They're doing the same thing. So it's they came off of you. Now there's a whole tree,
right?
Family tree of organizations that collaborate with Matt's Mission. One that really strikes a chord with me is Today I Matter.
Yes.
And I think a lot of people know who they are without realizing who they are. So if you want to talk about them.
Today I Matter. They're actually Connecticut based too. And they do the poster project with putting faces to the names of everybody lost to an overdose. And you can have your loved one's picture made into a yard sign, and then they display them all over the country. It's made its way down to, the nation's capital. There's a little documentary about them, but Kathy has partnered with them and brought them to our community, I don't know, 2 or 3 times now.
A couple times at least.
For her Celebrate Recovery events that she used to do in September. And it was a very powerful thing. And I mean, you and I have both walked through there. That was just a fraction of the actual amount of posters that, they actually have.
I know.
Now, do you, other than people that you work with and help, do you know anybody personally in your personal life that has died from an overdose?
Yes. I've lost friends. I've lost family member. Yeah. No,
I don't.
Matter of fact, I was pretty connected to the very first young man
Yeah.
So
No, there was I would say an 18-month time frame not too long ago where I went to many funerals, and
Really?
it's heartbreaking when you're doing this work and some you people that you're close, you don't even know.
Yeah.
Of course.
You know, and
of course.
there was one within my own family.
Some people can hide it very well. Absolutely.
So we were, there was a saying or something,
yeah, everyone knows somebody, loves somebody, is somebody, or has lost somebody to the
Yeah.
disease. Yeah.
Yeah, it's difficult. It's very. I mean, what do you do? But I think it's amazing, of what this community has become, because before Griswold Pride, the perception was not good.
No.
It was if you were somebody that
You hung out under the bridge down here, right?
Right.
yeah, or
right.
had a
Remember all
disorder,
that, right?
yeah, it's like you see him on the street, and it's
Sure.
like, oh,
Yeah.
that's
And-
just another drug addict.
And I
Right.
think that Today I Matter really
Changes that.
that.
That's a
'cause,
bullseye.
Yeah, you're putting a face
Sure.
to the
Right,
person,
right.
and you're showing it's somebody's sister, it's somebody's
Oh, yeah.
mother, it's
That's
somebody's brother, child.
But the perception has changed
Mm-hmm.
180%, and I'm one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Because I you don't know, you just, you grow up thinking a certain way,
Yeah.
and then you get educated about certain things and addiction, and you're like, oh, wait a minute. Yeah, that's not really the way that it is.
Mm-hmm.
Then you almost feel bad because it's like, why did I think that?
Mm.
So let's talk about perception.
Mm-hmm.
Well, perception programs. There was an organization,
Yeah.
that had a van. I
Right.
don't think they're doing it anymore. Are
Perception's
they? Or-
actually closed.
They did. Okay,
Yeah.
that's too bad.
Yeah, it is. It was a loss, especially with our community, because they're one of the only outside agencies that, they weren't even in Eastern Connecticut, technically. They're
Right.
in Northeastern. They're part of the Wyndham community. But they made it a priority to take their mobile programs to Jewett
Right,
City. And that was because Kathy never gave up in advocating for us. But,
Right.
they didn't have to do that. They were overstepping. They were going into Southeastern Connecticut, where their region was Northeast, So that was huge for us. And they had the two programs, harm reduction, syringe service, and then they had the medicated assisted treatment van, which was a huge resource. And now both of those are gone, but we do have mobile syringe services through Uncas Health District now. So,
Are they still going to the same place, same day, or?
no, they are at the town hall, be out around the back of the town hall, every Tuesday, I think from 2 to 3. And they provide a whole list of services, as well. So if you need blood pressure, screenings or anything like that, they'll be able to do that too.
So you talk about harm reduction.
Yes.
That's kind of where things are going.
Yes.
Right?
And that
So
was,
that's-
10 years ago, that was like, what are you talking about?
Exactly, yeah.
But no, that whole conversation, because we need to keep these people alive. We need to, if they're going to, they're going to use, let's make it safe for them.
So with that being said about keeping them alive, maybe you'd like to highlight on what the state did to your program with knocking out the Narcan boxes.
So,
because they're outside.
Glad you asked it.
Yeah.
And they're not temperature controlled.
Yeah. So
As part of public health and safety, we
Right.
do these things, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
and we've taken our education to the state lawmakers, who I believe are trying to fix it. We're one of the only states that is mandating that the outdoor Narcan cabinets are temperature controlled. The problem with that is, running electricity, this and that, blah, blah. And they're like $5,000 compared to $300.
Sure.
So, we had those 3 installed in the community. They were widely used. I think we handed out over 50 boxes of Narcan within those 3 months. Our overdose numbers, while those boxes were in place, was it 0 or 1? It was either 1 fatality or 0. I can't remember. For the beginning of 2024 till the end of June, the boxes were in place March, April, May. Since the Narcan's been removed, since July of 2024, we've had 7 fatalities.
Okay, so let's figure it out. It's not that the math don't lie.
Yeah.
Do the math, right? Yeah.
So we provided this data to our local legislators, and
Kathy even tried to go past that by putting her phone number on there, her personal phone number
yeah,
on the box that's right here,
yeah.
and call her, and she'll come out and bring you the Narcan.
But people want quick, easy, anonymous. access.
Yep,
You
they
know,
don't want to know
Yep.
who they are.
Yep. So hopefully that's going to be restored. I do have great news though, and this just passed last week. The Slater Library is going to be partnering with us to place a cabinet inside their building right now while the state works on updating these mandates so we can restock the outdoor cabinets.
So speaking in the terms of anonymity,
yeah.
do you think people will go into the library to access that?
I don't know. I'm gonna actually head over there after this, and we're gonna try to look at different locations where they can grab and go, but make sure it's also a safe place to install it.
And the other problem is you don't have nighttime access.
Right.
So
So
it helps, but
it helps, definitely helps. And hopefully we get, the state updates those mandates. We have another box, right? Griswold Fire Department was ready to put one on their box. And I've even reached out with Tracy Hansen up in Voluntown. Their fire department, they have people drive, that's a highly traveled road.
Right.
They see some people out of staters see fire department and they pull in there looking for Narcan because many fire departments now have the boxes on the outside. So she's like, how are you working around this? I'm like, well, we haven't found a workaround yet, but she's advocating and Tracy's on the state's OSAC, Opioid State Advisory Committee for the Opioid Fund. So she's a great resource and asset for us too.
So I think it's fair to say that the focus of Griswold Pride, just to give you an idea, I mean, like I know for us, it's not odd for your focus to change through the years.
Yeah.
I started off thinking I was going to be the AM radio king of Griswold. Nix that. So then we moved into internet audio, into video, and here we are doing this type of work, streaming sports and all.
She's got one mission and she sticks with it.
Yeah, but
there's no
it's
deterrence.
Changed.
But
that's my point. We too,
Right.
same thing.
Things
but
change here, you make the changes.
Yeah.
Things change here, they march on.
Yeah.
Exactly. So so instead of prevention, you've moved into harm reduction. Was that hard to transition? It was just a natural.
It was a natural organic progression, and it's the whole country shifted to that. So
the big problem was where we're going to put them, and that was the big issue. Where we're going to put these things, right? Debating all of that.
Oh,
You're talking about the Narcan,
the boxes.
Yeah.
So when did it happen? Where really somebody at some point had to throw up their hands and say, "We realize people are going to continue to use. What do we do to help save these people?"
Right.
When did that happen?
I don't know if it was.
It just happened.
It just was
kind of went from.
Mm-hmm.
It's organic. That's the beauty of it all.
When you have a failing business model, you change and adapt, and I think that's what happened.
Yeah.
The don't do drugs. This is your brain on drugs. That messaging in the 80s didn't work. So
right. Correct.
That's not what I do in the schools. That's not what we do. We are building resiliency. We're coping strategies, stress management. That is how you prevent, drug use.
Right.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
Is it true that you have to, I know DARE believe that you really have to start the programming in the fifth grade.
Yeah.
Fifth grade.
So the original DARE model was a complete failure as far as drug prevention. That's based on tons of studies on it, but it was very successful for the law enforcement, relationships and developing that. So, it was a great program. They have revamped it, so it's not what it was in the 80s and 90s. So it's more about making healthy choices now versus don't do drugs. And I would never knock DARE, but it was scientifically not evidence, based successful.
They gave it a good shot.
Yeah.
You have something here that you wanted to read.
Yeah.
Before we go.
So this came to us from Senator Murphy, and it was supposed to be read at the event, and we did not get a chance to do that. Dated March 14th, which was the day of our event. Dear friends, congratulations to all at the Griswold Partnership to Reduce the Influence of Drugs for Everyone. As you gather to celebrate your 10th anniversary, this event celebrates your years of work to reduce and prevent substance use while creating a safe, drug-free environment for the residents of Griswold. I wish I could be there in attendance for what I'm sure was a wonderful event. Since 2015, Griswold Pride has partnered with organizations across the state to raise awareness around substance use. Your dedication to educating the community is evident through your countless workshops, events, and outreach projects. Through your 10 years of extraordinary effort, you have secured over $1.5 million in prevention funding to support your work, receiving the Connecticut Association of Schools Distinguished Friend of Education honor in recognition of your commitment to education, and the United States Attorney's Office Community Policing Award in recognition of your intervention work are both a testament to you, to your unwavering commitment to serving the Griswold community. Thank you to all at Griswold Pride for your tireless efforts to support the residents of Griswold. Your community engagement and leadership amongst your peers has been a cornerstone in our shared fight against drug use. Your service has and will continue to improve the Griswold community. Best wishes as you celebrate this milestone, and I look forward to working with you for years to come. So signed, Senator Murphy. So everybody should be proud from the Griswold community for really building this and getting recognized, the way we have.
Got it. Anything else you want to talk about or you want to mention before we go? And, we'll see you before the 20th anniversary.
Do you want the tobacco compliance checks?
I'm so glad you brought that up.
One failure, right?
One, that's great.
No,
though.
I know.
That's great.
Compared to talk about
year.
the last one and talk about this
so
year.
we were pre-COVID, we were doing alcohol compliance checks pretty regularly.
Yep.
And then we stopped, with masks and all that stuff. And then the last year we revamped tobacco ones. I don't even know when the last time they were done. It was prior to me coming to town. So it's been a while. And, with something new like that, we had, I think, 4 failures last year. Then there was an additional violations for some illegal THC products and whatnot.
That was last year.
And so, but it was hard to get because we couldn't find trained youth in Eastern Connecticut. And all of a sudden I found a contact within the state, like Demas has a tobacco prevention enforcement unit and they're great. So now they come out, we connect them to our resident trooper and they go and do the compliance checks. So we did 16 retailers this year, only 1 failed. And I'm working on creating a decal for the ones who passed.
Right.
I was just going to say,
Yeah. And I've been, I'm going to give a shout out to Andrew over at Petromax because, he's my little thing. I was like, here, what about this? And I was like, well, retailers use it. He's like, absolutely. He took a look at the design.
Yeah.
So, the design's done. I'm just finding a vendor to use to purchase them.
Andrew's a good guy.
Yeah.
Why doesn't Connecticut do like other states? So, my kids both live down in West Virginia and North Carolina. And, along the way you go down there and stop for gas or get soda or whatever. And you go up to the cash registers and they have signs right there that everybody will get asked for an ID to buy cigarettes. They don't care if you're 85 years old and look like you're 110.
Yeah. Our law is 27. If you look 27
yeah, but this
or
mandatory.
older,
Everybody has to show an ID. You want to buy smokes, you got to show an ID.
Yeah.
We don't care how old you are or how old you look.
Yeah.
I don't get that.
I don't know.
Why don't they just do that? It's you can still get some non-compliant places, I'm sure.
Right.
Because nobody's watching the house all the time, right?
Right. So
thank you very much, Miranda,
thank
for
you.
bringing, all of this information to us today. And it's great 10 years.
Yeah.
And
see where we go from here.
The next 10 years,
10
see
more.
what happens. So
10 more. Yep.
You can always check out what Griswold Pride is doing by going to their website, which is www.griswoldpride.org. Pride, of course, stands for the Partnership to Reduce the Influence of Drugs for Everyone. They ain't kidding. So, and they've done God's work really in the last 10 years. So thank you very much, Miranda.
Thanks for having us.
Great job.
All right, Rich, thank you for coming on in. And we'll be back with some more community stuff real soon here on SNSN Sports Community.